Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that people often neglect to take seriously. Love is not just a feeling, it's a psychological reordering of your entire being. When a man begins to fall in love, his mind is thrown into a state of both clarity and chaos. There's an internal negotiation going on between his desire for freedom and his longing for connection. You see, for most men, life is structured around responsibility and order, or at least it should be. But love adds something unpredictable. It introduces vulnerability. The first thing that happens, psychologically, is that attention shifts. A man who once thought primarily about his goals, his ambitions, his future suddenly finds his mind occupied by someone else. Not in a shallow way, but profoundly. He starts imagining a future that is not just about him. He thinks, how will my actions affect her? What does she think of me? Biologically, dopamine surges. This intensifies focus. He notices everything, the way she speaks, her expressions, the smallest changes in her mood. It's not obsession, it's meaning. His brain has marked her as important. A good man, when he's in love, doesn't merely want to possess someone. He wants to deserve them. Love awakens aspiration. He starts working harder. He stands a little straighter. He wants to be reliable, competent, worthy. He's no longer just living for himself. He is now living in relation to someone he values. And that responsibility, that voluntary shouldering of emotional weight, is what makes a man grow. When a man begins to fall in love, one of the most profound changes that happens inside his mind is the shift of focus from himself to someone else. This isn't just a simple change in thought. It is a deep psychological and emotional transformation. A man who once spent most of his time thinking about his own goals, responsibilities, and future suddenly finds his thoughts revolving around another person. It's not forced, and it's not something he always notices at first. It just happens. Her presence begins to occupy his mental space. Her words, her laughter, the small expressions on her face, even the way she walks or speaks. These details become meaningful because his brain starts marking her as important, as someone who matters on a deep, emotional level. Biologically, this shift happens because of the release of chemicals like dopamine, which heighten focus and motivation. He is not just attracted, he's alert. He pays attention in a way he doesn't with others. He remembers small things she says, notices subtle changes in her mood, and becomes more aware of how his actions affect her. His mind begins to link happiness with her happiness, and discomfort when she is upset. This is the beginning of emotional attachment. Along with this, his imagination starts to change too. He doesn't just see his future as his own journey anymore. He begins to imagine what it might look like with her in it. He wonders how she sees him, whether he is good enough, and if he is someone she can rely on. Even if he doesn't speak about it, these thoughts quietly guide his decisions. He might change his behavior, standing a little taller around her, choosing words more carefully, or putting an extra effort to make her smile. This shift of attention is not weakness. It's meaning. It shows that she has become part of his psychological world. She is no longer just another person, she becomes a priority. His emotions, thoughts, and decisions start aligning with the idea of caring for someone beyond himself. This is one of the earliest, yet most powerful signs of love. Not loud or dramatic, but quiet, steady, and sincere. It's the point where he begins to move from independence to connection, from focus on self to shared meaning. When a man starts to fall in love, the experience isn't only about happiness or excitement. There is also a deep sense of vulnerability that quietly settles into his mind. This vulnerability comes from the awareness that he now has something to lose. He realizes that the person he cares about has the power to affect him emotionally. Her opinion matters, her acceptance matters, and so does her absence. This emotional exposure can be frightening because it breaks through the protective walls he may have built around himself. He begins to question himself. What if I'm not good enough? What if I disappoint her? What if she walks away? These thoughts aren't signs of weakness. They're signs that he truly cares. Love introduces risk. The more he feels, the more he fears losing. Up until now, he may have controlled most aspects of his life, his decisions, his goals, his emotions. But love cannot be fully controlled. It requires trust, and trust means allowing someone else the ability to hurt you, even if you hope they never will. This is where the fear of rejection becomes intense. He starts worrying whether she sees his flaws, whether his imperfections will push her away, or whether he might fail to be the person she expects. This fear also creates internal conflict. One part of him wants to protect himself, stay guarded, avoid deep emotional involvement, but another part longs to connect, to be honest, to be fully seen. Falling in love becomes a quiet battle between the desire to open up and the instinct to stay safe. He might hesitate to express his feelings, not because he doesn't care, but because he cares too much. Yet this vulnerability has value. It forces him to confront his insecurities and reflect on who he truly is. It makes him more aware of his emotional world. The fear he feels isn't simply negative. It's a sign that something meaningful is unfolding. Love asks him to take a leap of faith, to accept that uncertainty is part of something beautiful. And even though the fear remains, he continues to care. That is the courage of love, not the absence of fear, but the decision to love despite it. When a man falls in love, something transformative begins to happen within him, an inner push to become better, more responsible, more capable. This desire isn't about impressing someone temporarily. It's about becoming worthy of the person he loves. Love, at its core, challenges him to rise above his flaws, laziness, or selfishness. He doesn't just want to win her affection. He wants to deserve it. He wants to be strong enough to protect, stable enough to rely on, and honest enough to be trusted. This longing for improvement is not forced by anyone else. It comes naturally from within, driven by respect and admiration for the person he loves. He starts examining himself more honestly. He becomes aware of his weaknesses, not to feel ashamed, but because he doesn't want those weaknesses to hurt the person he cares about. If he's careless, he wants to be more thoughtful. If he lacks direction, he wants to find purpose. If he's inconsistent, he wants to be steady. Love becomes a mirror that reflects not only who he is, but who he could become. It shows him the gap between the man he is today and the man he wants to be for her tomorrow. This internal change affects his behavior in subtle but meaningful ways. He begins to take his responsibilities more seriously. He works harder, pays more attention to his future, and makes decisions with greater maturity. He starts valuing things like emotional control, patience, and honesty, not because someone demanded it, but because love has awakened a deeper sense of duty. He wants to offer stability, kindness, and strength, not just words or feelings. And yet, this process isn't perfect or easy. He may fail sometimes, feel overwhelmed by expectations, or doubt his ability to change. But still, he tries. That effort itself is a sign of true love. It means his love isn't selfish or temporary. It is a commitment to growth. He doesn't aim for perfection, but for progress. He understands that to love someone is not just to feel deeply, but to become someone who can support, respect, and uplift the one he loves. In this way, love becomes a powerful motivation. It pushes him to move beyond comfort and step into responsibility. It turns desire into discipline and affection into purpose. Love doesn't just change how he feels. It changes who he is becoming. When love matures into commitment, it marks one of the most significant transformations inside a man's mind. At this point, love is no longer just a collection of emotions or fleeting feelings. It becomes a conscious decision, a promise. The excitement and uncertainty of early love gradually evolve into something deeper and steadier. He begins to understand that real love is not only about how someone makes him feel, but about what he is willing to give, protect, and build with that person. Commitment shifts his perspective from what do I gain from this to what can I contribute? What future can we create together? This transition requires emotional maturity. He starts to see love not as a perfect fairy tale, but as a partnership that involves responsibility, effort, and sacrifice. He accepts that challenges, misunderstandings, and differences will exist, yet he chooses to stay, to listen, to work through them. This is where love transforms from simple affection to loyalty. He understands that walking together through imperfections is more meaningful than chasing flawless fantasy. In commitment, love becomes intertwined with duty, not a forced duty, but a voluntary one, a duty born from care. He feels responsible for her well-being, not in a controlling way, but in a protective and faithful sense. He wants to be present not just in moments of joy, but also in times of difficulty. He thinks beyond temporary emotions and begins to act with the long term in mind. His decisions about work, finances, and future plans gradually include her. The idea of may transforms into wuss. There's also peace in this stage. The anxious questions that once clouded his mind, does she feel the same? Am I enough? Are replaced with trust, understanding, and shared direction. Even though life remains uncertain, commitment gives him stability. It anchors his emotions and aligns his values. He doesn't see love as something to constantly test or question. Instead, he sees it as something to protect and grow. The stage of love requires courage, because choosing one person means giving up endless possibilities in exchange for meaningful certainty. It's a declaration that he would rather build something real with one person than chase temporary comfort with many. In choosing commitment, he becomes more disciplined, more patient, and more grounded. Love stops being merely a feeling and becomes a foundation for life.